Okay, so now we're going to jump to the letters. Zayin. Okay, we did Vov last week. Does everyone remember Vov? Okay, you guys, you're learning the Hebrew letters. Now, here's what's fascinating. Let's look at the Hebrew letters. Okay, let's start from the beginning. We have Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, and Vav, right? Do you remember how I told you it tells a story? The entire Hebrew alphabet in order is actually telling us a story. The Aleph stands for who? The Father. That's why God's name, Elohim, Adonai. The Aleph, he's the Father, and the Aleph is silent. The Father doesn't speak, he only speaks through his Son. And Beit is Son. And what did the Son do? The letter Beit means what in Hebrew or English? House. And so what did the Father do? He sent his Son housed in flesh. But also think of the Beit as our house. So he became like us. And so the Son is going to the house, but he sends his Spirit, which is the next letter, the Gimel. And Gimel means recompense, to give a reward or punishment. So here the Father sends the Son, then it says the Son sends the Spirit, and he sends it to the door of our house. Yeshua also said he's the door. This has multiple meanings. Yeshua is the door, and the Spirit is going to the door of our house. Dalet also means poor, and that refers to us. We're all poor, we're all needy without the Spirit of God. And if in humility we open the door, what happens? We get the letter Hey, which refers to the breath of God. And just as the breath of God brought Adam to life, now the breath of God is making you into a new creation. And so Vav stands for man. It's the sixth letter. Man was created on the sixth day. And so here the Father sends the Son, who sends the Spirit to the door of our house. And if we open, he'll breathe new life in us and we become a new creation. This is all there. Okay, so now you're born again. You're a new creation. What is the next thing God wants to do? The letter Zayin. Why is that important? Zayin means a weapon. And look at 2 Corinthians 10:4. The weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds. If we're a new creation, one thing we need is spiritual weapons. I can't help but think of a creation again. Do you remember the first man, Adam? God said it's not good that he should be alone. I need to make a helpmeet for him. Helpmeet is not the correct word, ladies. Helpmeet actually means I need someone to protect him. The women were created to protect the man. And how does she protect the man? The Hebrew word is etzer. And basically it means she's the one who sees the enemy coming. Women have the intuition that men don't. Men are focused on the work. And the women are supposed to protect him by watching for the enemy. And then when she sees the enemy coming, she goes, "Yeah, go get him." All right. One of the greatest weapons that we have, it tells us in the Bible, is to remember. To remember. Look at Deuteronomy 32, verse 7 and 8. I mean, I know some ladies that have too good of a memory. Okay. It says, remember the days of old, consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you, when the Most High divided the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. Do you know what's interesting thing about that remember there? This is in Deuteronomy. And he says, remember when the Most High divided their nations to their inheritance. When did that happen? When did he divide the nations to their inheritance? And how many nations were there? 70 nations. And what did we just read? How many children of Israel went into Egypt? 70. The 70 children would intercede for the 70 nations. This is why on Yom Kippur, they would sacrifice 70 bulls, one for each nation. And that's why the Feast of Tabernacles is known as the Feast of Nations. Yom Kippur, Israel had to atone for themselves so that 5 days later, they could now make atonement for the children of Israel. Just like Aaron had to make atonement for himself in his house before he could make an atonement for the nations, or for Israel, I mean. One of the sages said, if the nations had only known the purpose of the temple, they never would have destroyed it. They'd have put their armies around it, protecting it. Because it was going to bring atonement to them. So Zayin, it's a weapon, and one of our weapons is to remember. And the amazing thing about this, God divided the nations around the Tower of Babel. If you go to Genesis 10, that's where the 70 nations are listed. That was long before the 70 children of Israel were ever even born. God knew how many nations there would be, and he made the number of nations equal the number of children in Israel that wouldn't even exist for several hundred more years. Zayin means, that letter, like I told you, every letter is also a word. The word means to mark so it's recognizable, to remember, to mention, to talk about it. Well, one thing that a axe or a sword or whatever, what does it do? It cuts. It's sharp, all right? The ancient letter looked like a scythe that they would use to cut things. Now, in the blue is Zayin, that's how you spell it, and the noon becomes long like I said there. But here's the thing, here it means to basically separate. In other words, the holy from the unholy. Okay, let's make a separation, and that's what God wants to do. Well, one of the things that God separates is time. Okay, Zakar on the right means to remember. Zaman on the left refers to time, and the Zayin is to divide time. We have a week of days, and then what is cut? The Shabbat. We have a week of weeks, or number of days, to cut Shavuot. We have a week of months, okay, the feast from the 1st through the 7th month. We have a week of years, referring to the Shemitah years, Daniel's 490 years. We have 7 weeks of years, bringing the Jubilee. We have weeks of millenniums that go from Adam to now. With the number 7 at the end comes finality, heralding new beginnings. That's why the next letter, Het, is 8, symbolizing new beginnings and new life. So the Zayin, when you see the Zayin, think of something that is separating the holy from the unholy. Holy times to unholy times. If you say every day is the Sabbath, every day is holy, then nothing is holy. Okay. Here we have the word zikru, and here you see it at the beginning of this verse. Let me see. I'm going to go ahead and read this verse, and then we'll come to this slide. In Psalm 119, verse 49 through 56, if you remember, the entire chapter of Psalm 119 is all about the Hebrew alphabet. 8 verses is given to every letter. So the first 8 verses of Psalm 119 all begin with the letter of Aleph. Every word does. The next 8 verses all begin with Beit. The next 8 Gimel. The next 8 Dalet. The next 8 Hey. Okay, the next 8 Vav. The next 8 Zayin. And I told you the letter Zayin means to do what? Remember. So on your notes here, I have verse 49 through 56, which are devoted to the letter Zayin. And look at what it says. How does it begin? Remember the word to your servant upon which you've caused me to hope. This is my comfort in my affliction. Hey, if we're ever afflicted, if we want comfort, we need to start remembering. It says, for your word has quickened me. That's like the letter Hey, breathing in new life. The proud have had me greatly in derision, yet have I not declined from your law. I remembered your judgments of old, O Lord, and have comforted myself. But look at this verse. Oh my gosh. It says, horror has taken a hold upon me because of the wicked that want nothing to do with your Torah. The wicked are the ones who say the law. We've forsaken the law. And then he says, your statutes have been my songs in the house of my pilgrimage. I have what? Remembered your name, O Lord, in the night, and I've kept your law. This I have because I kept your precepts. In these final days, we're also entering, we are again adjured to remember. Why? What are we supposed to remember? The Torah, the law. He's warning us. If you want to survive the days that are coming, you have to bring back to remembrance the law. Look at Malachi 4:4. Everybody quotes. How does it begin? Remember the law of Moses, my servant, which I commanded to him in Horeb, or Mount Sinai, for all of Israel, with the statutes and the judgment. Do you realize remembering the Torah is a great spiritual weapon to be used in spiritual warfare? Why do you think the devil doesn't want you to have that weapon? He wants you hitting him with a feather. This is why this verse here is the verse in Malachi. You can see it, Zakru, and then you can see the word Torah, Moshe, Moses. Okay, this is that verse here. And the most important thing for us to remember is that. And the very next verses say, Elijah's gonna come back. Zayin, the letter Zayin, just like different fonts on your computer, when you look at the letter Zayin, even in Hebrew, the font changes a little bit. One of them has the Zayin with what looks like a crown on its head. Well, they say what it is, it's actually like the letter Vov with the letter Yud on top. Well, since Vov represents man and the Zayin is a crowned Vov or a crowned man, we can also see how Zayin represents Yeshua, the crowned Messiah, who is the king of the Jewish people. Since Zayin represents a sword, we also see the Son of Man crowned in having the sword of the Spirit. Now, it's interesting. Here is another Hebrew word that begins with Zayin. And depending on how it's pronounced, Zamar or Zamar, there's different meanings to that same word. Before I go there, Revelation 14:14, it says, I looked and behold a white cloud, and upon the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. Right there, that's the picture of the crowned Vov that I just showed you. And yet in Revelation, it's all there. The Son of Man, he's got a crown and he has a sword in his hand. Okay, but now let's go to Psalms 9:11. It says, sing praises to the Lord, which dwells in Zion, declare among the people his doings. That is the word Zamar, and I have these harps here. Zamar, the Hebrew word, means literally to touch the strings of a musical instrument. So it's like David is playing the harp, and that's Zamar. And then it says it's to play upon this musical instrument accompanied with singing. So you're celebrating in psalm and music, you're giving praise, you're singing forth God's praises, the psalms, plucking an instrument. Now, there's one denomination that says there's to be no musical instruments in the church because nowhere does the word musical instruments mentioned in the New Testament. Well, guess what? In the New Testament, it says to bring a psalm. And a psalm means to have a musical instrument and to sing with it. So, yes, it is mentioned in the New Testament. But the other thing I want to mention that's kind of fascinating, this is one of the stories that's kind of told in ancient Jewish history. David mentions that at midnight he would rise up and play his harp and sing to the Lord. Y'all familiar with that? How many of you know they didn't have alarm clocks back then? David at night would open his bedroom window and put his harp in the window. And at midnight, the Spirit of God would go through the strings and it would wake him up. The Spirit of God was his alarm clock that would wake him up at midnight, going through the strings. And then he would get up and begin to sing praises to God. But here's what's interesting, that those very same letters pronounced differently, look what it means. In Leviticus 25:3, it says, 6 years you're to sow your field, and 6 years you shall prune your vineyard and gather in the fruit. The word to prune also is the same thing. Well, guess what? God is pruning his vineyard, all right? And we need to be pruning off the flesh. And the way you can do that is by singing praises. Isn't that fascinating? Okay.